All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada Behind the Bench. We're just going to give it about a minute now because it's just about 2:00 p.m. So we'll give it a little bit of time to let the room fill up. And then Tony La Ferrara, my colleague and friend, he'll take it away.
I will, Richard. I will. How's the air where you are?
Still smells a little bit like barbecue, actually. So
It does, right?
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know.
You as well? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? We were just in the backyard checking the pillows. We have a small gazebo.
Yeah.
And they're all dirty.
They're dusty, right? Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
dusty.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all dusty.
Well, I'll say our physiotherapist in my clinic that we run, he's from India, and he told me that he said, yeah, it's bad here, but he said, and we looked it up on the index, the air quality rating that we have is a 4 right now because of these fires. In Delhi, where he's from, the average rating is almost a 40, so it's almost 10 times worse.
Wow.
All the time. Yeah, I mean, some of these bigger cities, Delhi is one of them. They're big, they're overcrowded a bit, and so they have problems like that all the time. So anyway, so we're lucky, I guess. It's only temporary.
If you put it that way,
yeah. Anyway, with that, I think maybe we're good to go, Tony.
Yeah, we're good to go, Richard. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back for part 2 of integrating soccer fitness into your practices. So, Richard, last week we talked about the aerobic system. We touched on the anaerobic system as well a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to talk about speed and agility and how you can improve both, or how you can, I guess that's the word, improve both of them. So that's what we're trying to do all the time. And so you and I had a little chat before about one of my favorite topics. I don't know if you're going to bring it up, but if you don't, I will make sure I will. So Richard, I'm ready to learn a lot more about speed and agility, and I think we all are. So I'll throw it to you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, of course, and hope everybody that's watching, thank you for watching as well, and hope you get some real valuable information out of this presentation and out of this talk. So we talked last week, you're right, Tony, about the aerobic system, and we mentioned also a little bit about the anaerobic system. And really, when we're talking about speed and agility, it's important to keep in mind that we are talking about anaerobic exercise. And the main difference between aerobic and anaerobic exercise is that with aerobic exercise, athletes are using oxygen in order to create energy. And with anaerobic exercise, it's not that there is no oxygen, because if there was no oxygen, we would die. But it's that when you're exercising anaerobically, you need energy at such a fast rate that the process of using the oxygen to create energy, the aerobic respiration or cellular respiration, takes too long. So we need energy actually much quicker. And lucky for us that we have these other ways to generate energy really quickly for the anaerobic exercise, which is the short duration, high intensity, sprinting, agility, changes of direction, all those kinds of things, which of course are part of soccer. And that's what we'll talk about now. So again, last week was aerobic training, and this week is part 2, where we're going to talk about speed and agility. And finally, next week will be part 3, the final little part to our mini course about strength and power. And of course, we are talking, when we talk about speed and agility, as I said, we're talking about anaerobic exercise. So we need to have a little bit of an understanding of the anaerobic system. And again, this is not a physiology class like before, but just a little bit of background information. The anaerobic system provides the fastest energy that is possibly available, and it allows athletes, it allows humans to perform short duration, high intensity work. And in fact, one of the molecules that we have in our muscles, it's called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. We have it in our muscles, and we also have another molecule called creatine phosphate, or CP. And it's actually that phosphate group, the P on the end of the acronym, that is used to create ATP. And so if we break down creatine phosphate, we can break down creatine phosphate, get the phosphate off, attach it to ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, to make ATP in one reaction very quickly. And we can even use the ATP in our muscles to break away the phosphate and create new ATP in order to perform muscular work, also with one reaction. So again, not a physiology class, but it is kind of interesting, I think, to know that the reason that we can't use oxygen to create energy when we're exercising anaerobically is because to use oxygen, there are many chemical reactions that happen. We have to break down glucose. We have to convert glucose to pyruvate. Pyruvate has to go into the mitochondria. The Krebs cycle has to happen. And then there's something called oxidative phosphorylation. And Tony, I remember you studied this in phys ed class back in the day, right?
Oh, Richard, that was a long time ago, man. Why would you bring that up?
So, only reason I'm bringing it up is just so we can understand how many different chemical reactions have to happen to get from glucose to the creation of energy. It's a little slower. It's still fast, but it's a little slower. And when we're exercising anaerobically, because we need energy so quickly, we do it quicker, and we do it with, as I mentioned, creatine phosphate.
Yeah, Richard, would you say that ATP and creatine, it's like a little spark? It burns really fast. Like you start it burns fast, and then it's gone.
That's right. That's a good way to think of it, because
so,
unfortunately, even though it does produce energy really quickly, because there's only one reaction required, we only have about 10 seconds worth.
Right.
And so if we could find a way to synthesize that molecule and make it available for long periods of time, then we would probably there'd be no climate change. There's no emissions from it. It burns clean, and it produces a lot of energy. But anyway, humans only have 10 seconds of it. So,
no, I know.
Yeah. So that's it. So that's the idea. Just whenever we think anaerobic, just think, as you see there, right? Short duration, high intensity exercise, and we know that soccer players do a lot of that, right? Like, in my course, we have whole modules about this where we talk about all the running and the fast running that soccer players do. On average, in a game, you might see 10 to 20 sprints, and you might also see a few kilometers of very fast running. And so all of those, the fast running and the sprints, every single run, those are anaerobic forms of exercise. And then moving beyond that, there's also, as we know, not just running in soccer, but there's decelerating, there's jumping for aerial balls, there's tackling and contact and changing direction, all those things. So all of those high intensity actions, they all require energy very quickly. They all require the use of the anaerobic system. And that's really, kind of what we're talking about here. And again, just as the room fills up, I did forget to mention this before, but, both Tony and I, if anyone has a question, please put it in the chat. And I know here and there, sometimes chat was not enabled completely. So we'll do that now for everybody. You can type your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. So here we go. Again, the energy system that we're talking about today, again, that's the anaerobic alactic system. Okay, because there is also an anaerobic lactic system, and the anaerobic lactic system, as opposed to the alactic system, simply is used to perform sustained high-intensity actions, whereas the alactic system is used to perform short-duration high-intensity actions. So the key difference is if you do just one sprint and you can rest a little bit in between, you're working anaerobically with the alactic system. If you're trying to do any type of sustained action, and I know Tony and I, we talked last week, and this is a topic that I like a lot, right? Which is pressing, and especially pressing in the attacking half, or maybe even in the attacking third. So when players press, they're typically sprinting, but it may be sustained. It may even be longer than 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. Hopefully it's not longer than that, because if it is, it's going to require a lot of recovery. But really it's that sustained high intensity action which constitutes more anaerobic, the lactic system. But today we're talking speed and agility. So today we're talking about the alactic system. And of course, we know already that it's the aerobic system that is primarily used to drive the recovery between the high intensity actions. We talked about all of that last week. So I do see a chat here. Will this recording, Christy, will this recording? Yes, all the recordings are going to be made available, but we're going to do them at the end, just because we're putting it together as a little mini course. So Christy, yes, you will see everything, or you'll have access rather to all the recordings, as will all of our members as well. But we're going to wait till after next week to do it. All right. So this is, again, review from last week, but this is what soccer looks like. This is what the game always has looked like. It's what the game always will look like. And therefore, it is what your training should look like if you want your training to be specific to soccer. Sprint, rest, sprint. The key difference, and remember, we talked about this with the aerobic system. You can use this pattern to train the aerobic system or the anaerobic system. The difference is that if it's the aerobic system that you're training, you may have longer sprint or work periods, and you may have rest periods that kind of match the work periods. We talked about that work to rest ratio for the aerobic system of 1:1, maybe even 2:1. So the work periods or the sprint periods aerobically are longer, and the rest periods match them. For the anaerobic system, often, and especially for the alactic system, the work periods are very short. And again, that's because we don't have that much creatine phosphate in our muscles. We only have about 5 to 10 seconds worth. Okay, so short work periods, and the rest periods then are longer. And we'll speak about the details in a little bit. But basically, if your work to rest ratio, if you're trying to train anaerobically, you're trying to train for speed and agility, and your work to rest ratio is smaller than 1:5, meaning you work, or you rest rather, 5 times the amount of time that you work. If the ratio is smaller than that, you're not really training for speed. You're not really training anaerobically. You're going to start to accumulate too much fatigue, and your players are going to slow down. That's very important to note. Okay, the rest period in between the work periods for speed training must be sufficient to allow recovery, because if it isn't, it means that the players, when they do subsequent repetitions, the second, the third, the fourth rep, and so on, they're actually going to run slower. And if you train slow, you will never, ever actually get faster. So keep that in mind. Okay, the activity pattern is the same, but if we're talking anaerobic, alactic, speed, agility, you need short, maximal intensity work periods, and you need a work to rest ratio at least 1:5, and maybe up to 1:10. We'll get into
Richard,
yeah.
the way I would put it, you will correct me. I know if I'm wrong. It's like having a gas tank. So, for the aerobic, you have a big gas tank. So
That's
you go
right.
slow, and it takes longer to burn all of that energy.
Right.
With the anaerobic, you have a small gas tank.
Yep.
So once you make your sprint and you burn it up, then you need a longer time to refill it. Am I right?
Absolutely. The
Yeah,
energy
and
stores
so-
are smaller. So yeah.
Right. And so you need longer time to refill it. And if you keep doing it quickly, you're never going to fill it and you're going to die.
Yeah. Or in our case, simply what happens is players will slow down. And so this is like, because I see this a lot, and I think training where you're repeatedly sprinting, if you don't rest a lot, and we talked about it last week, that's good for the aerobic system. It's actually very effective. There's a word for it. It's called repeated sprint training. And it's very effective to build, the heart and the lungs and to improve recovery. But don't call it speed training. It's not speed training. Because what happens, again, if you don't rest in between the repetitions, you accumulate fatigue, you accumulate lactic acid, you don't replenish the creatine in your muscles, you don't refill the small gas tank, right? And then you literally move slower. And
less
so
is more.
Exactly. Yeah.
When
For
it
the
comes to
anaerobic,
anaerobic, yeah.
less is more. Absolutely. So These are the variables, and again, this is a summary. We'll show in a little bit some examples, training session examples of this. But let's start from the beginning. And what are the different variables within the sprint component? That's the work component that we can manipulate. First of all, we have the time. If we're training for speed, it's 1 to 10 seconds. Less than 1 second is also okay, but it's kind of hard to do that. And more than 10 seconds, if that happens. So that means if you're sprinting or you're doing any exercise, soccer exercise, whatever, where you're working at a high intensity or almost maximal intensity for more than 10 seconds, you have exhausted then your creatine, you've started to accumulate lactic acid, and there's some fatigue that's going to set in. And, Tony, you probably remember I was asking you, if you're coaching your team to press, how long after losing the ball do you want them ideally to win it back?
Yeah, we were talking something like 5-6 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
Because then you're going to empty your tank, and then you won't stop them anymore. That's it. Then you're done.
Exactly. So that's the idea, is that the body only has this limited amount of energy. So when we're training, we have to work within those limits, and we have to work more or less within the limit of 1 to 10 seconds. So we'll see examples of this, right? And I would ask anyone who's watching and watching live, please feel free, if you want to take your stopwatch out and watch the players when they're working and time how long they work for. You'll see, that you may see some sprints that are 2 seconds, really quick, 1 to 2 seconds. You might see some agility exercises where they're working for about 5 or 6 seconds, but not more, right? Definitely not more than 10. That's the way it has to be. The distance, okay, and this can be in a straight line. Keep in mind, we talked last week about kind of that continuum between predictability and specificity. The reality is, in soccer, a lot of the fast running is done in a straight line. There's a lot of turning and changing direction, but there's also a lot of straight running. So nothing wrong with that, but it should be done within these distances. 5 meters minimum, 40 meters maximum. There is never, ever a time in a game when a soccer player sprints more than 40 meters. Even the most aggressive counterattack, I don't know, the fullback who, let's say intercepts a pass way back in his own end and, quickly plays the ball upfield and sprints, he or she, they're not going to sprint more than 40 meters. By the time they sprint 40 meters, they're already in the opposing team's penalty box. So, and that's very rare. So that's the distance. Time of 1 to 10 seconds, distance of 5 to 40 meters. Now we got to talk about the speed and the intensity. And let's be clear about this, because there are two things we have to consider. The first is the speed or the intensity of the actual movement within the exercise, the actual sprint or agility run or whatever it is, right? And they must be 100%. They must be performed at maximal intensity. That's the other thing that sometimes maybe coaches get wrong when they do exercises and they call it speed training, but the players aren't running as fast as they can. If athletes in training don't run as fast as they possibly can, there is absolutely no way that they can improve speed. Speed can only be improved with actual sprinting. So the movements must be 100% maximal. And I've put this little word here, which I've highlighted and underlined, which is to use competitions. So maybe Tony, why do you think I've said that? Like we're talking, and when I say competitions, I mean one player competing against another player. Why is that so important?
Well, especially when it comes to speed and working hard. If you're working against somebody else, then you have more of an incentive to go as fast as you can, because you want to beat the other guy, the other person, right?
Right.
If you do it on your own, you don't find that enthusiasm, if you will, like to go at full speed. So competitions are fantastic.
Right, and that's the idea, really, and the reason that I'm suggesting this is that putting one player competing against another player in an exercise automatically gives you the best possible chance that the players will push themselves as hard as they can, because they don't want to lose. And you can put, we'll see some examples of this, but you can put little, rewards or punishments, like if you lose the race or something, you have to do 5 push-ups. I do that a lot, but I don't really care about the push-ups. That's not the point. The point is simply to add an incentive, right? To motivate them. Kids want to compete, they don't want to lose. And by the way, I say kids, I get this question a lot. I think there was someone that even texted me this morning about this presentation. Is this applicable to youth players or is it only for professionals? Here's what I'm going to say. The videos that you're going to see, the sessions, first of all, there's a range in age. Some of the players are in their teens and some of them are under 10. Okay. I have used these exercises, and I guarantee you, the players who have worked with me can back this up. I've used these exercises with young kids, you know, recreational, rep, whatever. And I've used the same with professionals at the highest levels here in Canada, even overseas, and the national team. So these are, and the truth is that adults, professionals, high level players, they love these 1v1 competitions too, for the same reasons. They don't want to be told, you know, stand on a line and run there. They would much rather have a little, you know, exercise where they're competing and one is trying to pull a penny off the other one's shorts or whatever it is. So these are really, they're applicable to all ages. The difference is a lot of times when you're changing exercises or customizing things according to the age, it's not so much what you do, it's how much, how long the sprints are, you know, the load, the volume, those are the things that you would change. But anyway, all that, a lot of that is, you know, a long version of just saying the movement must be as fast as possible. But then we got to think about in the exercise, the overall activity, the RPE, or the rating of perceived exertion, has to be lower. Because if it's, you know, I'm suggesting 4 to 6, that's 4 to 6 out of 10, 40 to 60% of maximal. If the intensity of the overall activity is greater than 6, you know, you're working now at 65, 70% of maximal, you're probably working aerobically at that point. You're probably not resting enough. So the movements have to be as fast as possible, but again, there needs to be enough rest. And that brings us to the final variable, which is the rest. 10 seconds to 2 minutes. And that again depends on how long you worked for. But the idea is that you end up with a work to rest ratio. Okay, so that's for speed and agility training, a work to rest ratio between 1 to 5 and 1 to 10. If your exercises have a 5 or 6 second sprint and you want the athletes to recover before they do it again, you better let them rest 1 minute before they do it again. If you don't, that's fine, but then that means you're not working anaerobically. Tony, I think you put your hand up there.
Yeah, I have two questions, and I hope, you know, this helps everyone else. I know it will help me.
Yeah.
So, when you do your speed training in training, right, you're having a session. Is it better to do at the beginning of the training after warm up? Is it better to do in the middle of your session or to do it in the end, at the end of your session?
So yeah, good question.
Well,
and I know this
what's
comes
your
up
advice on that?
Good. No, it comes up a lot, and you know, I think us you know, former players maybe can think back to when we played, or you know, a long time ago, that was the traditional method of training, was to train first and then to do the sprinting or whatever physical stuff at the end. Now, ideally, to improve speed, to improve agility, because these are anaerobic qualities, and there's a neuromuscular component to them, meaning the connection between the brain and the muscle. And we have these amazing motor neurons, okay, that again connect from our brain or our spinal cord all the way to every single muscle. And there's actually an electrical signal or an electrical current that travels along those motor neurons to our muscles. And that electrical current, okay, and then the firing of the muscles, or the contracting of the muscles that comes, you know, from that electrical current, it just functions better when we're not fatigued. So what does that mean? That means if you took, and there's lots of research that's been done on this, and you know, any coach can try it if they want to see it in action, but take players and just, you know, test them how high they can jump or how fast they can run, you know, before a game or a hard training session, and then train them hard, do a hard aerobic session or whatever. You can even do it after a game if you want, you know. There's lots of research has been done on this, and then test them again, see how high they can jump after the game, or you know, or how fast they can run. They're going to jump lower, they're going to be less powerful, and they're going to run slower, they're going to be less fast. So if the goal is to improve speed or power, technically speaking, after a warm-up but before any other type of training is best, because the neuromuscular system functions better when the body is not fatigued.
Yeah, Richard, I just wanted to add one thing. So you said before that in order to train properly, the intensity has to be at 100%.
Right.
So if we know that, if we do the speed at the end, then the players are not going to be, they're going to be tired already.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're never going to be at 100%.
Yeah.
90 maybe, I doubt, but they're never going to be at 100%. So doing your speed training at the end of the session, I don't think it's going to help improving that energy system.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, and really, you know, that's the idea, is that you know, again, remember that the only way for players to actually become faster is for them to sprint as fast as they can, and they can't sprint as fast as they can. They can't work at 100% of their maximal capacity if they're fatigued. So yes, you need a good warm up for sure, right? Again, you know, in our course we teach all about that. You can learn how to do it. But after a warm up, then kind of the sprint training, the speed agility training, the best time to do it is in the beginning, before any other type of training.
Yeah, and Richard, I hate to be a pain again.
No problem.
But your warm up could also be the time. Speed training could also be part of your warm up.
It can.
Right?
It can. Some of these exercises I'll show you. You know, they can.
So you can incorporate it in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know, and then you move on to something else, right?
Right. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
need to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it you know, it kind of ties in together that way. And the other thing I'll just make you know, clear just about, you know, when we're talking about rest, right? Is that ideally the rest in between any type of repetitions of sprints or fast runs or whatever, it should be passive. So passive, it means let the players stand still, walk, catch their breath. And remember, catch your breath, it's kind of an interesting term, because that's not all you're doing. The reason you're catching your breath is because your aerobic system is kicking in order to help replenish the creatine phosphate that you lost and buffer and, you know, deal with the lactic acid that you're producing. So if players aren't given a little bit of passive rest in between, if they're told to run or keep ups, or, you know, that can interfere with the recovery. So really the best way to do it, sprint fast, right? Run as fast as possible, put competitions in there to force players to run as fast as possible, but give a little bit of passive rest, and follow these work to rest ratios. It doesn't have to be too much rest, but just enough, 1:5 to 1:10. So again, if there's any questions, please feel free to type in the chat. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at some video examples. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute while I bring up the videos on screen. Here we have the first one. Oh, where are we here? Okay, just bear with me, everybody. Just a second. We're going to find it here. Okay, and I'll have to share my screen here. Here it is. Okay, so hoping that everyone can see this.
Yeah, I think we can see it, Richard.
Can you hear it?
Yeah. No,
You
I
can't
cannot
hear it, but you can see it. All right, so let's have a look at the exercise. So just in case, I'm not sure if the audio is working here, but the setup here, it's very simple. I'm the coach. I'm standing, you know, we've got about 15 meters. We've got a little gate, a little yellow gate there, and I'm standing sort of to the side of the gate with two cones, usually a green and a red, or a yellow and a red, or something like that. The green will mean go. I've got the cones behind my back. So we've got two players competing. Green means go, red means nothing. So they only go when they see green. And you can see the girls here that one has a little penny tucked into her shorts like a tail, and the other is going to stand a little to the side and a little bit behind. So when they see the green, which means go, the one with the tail, she's just simply trying to run through that gate as fast as possible without her tail being pulled, and the other is trying to catch it. Now, what is this really? This is a straight sprint, 15 meters, right? It's within that distance. Again, and if anyone wants to kind of check stopwatches or to look how long the players are working for. You can do that. Yeah, some of you guys texted here and said no audio. Advanced and share sound. Let me see if there's a quick way I can try to share the sound here. Here we go. Share sound. Okay. All right. So share sound is on. Perhaps you'll hear now. But in any case, the sprint distance is within the range that we talked about. The work time is going to be within the range, and watch and see, right? See if it looks like these players are running as fast as possible. So I'll hit play. Hopefully you guys can hear it now.
Okay. Both players must run in a straight line. The green cone is the signal to start. So if you show the red cone, players should not move. You can try using different starting positions as seen in the session here, with the tail standing 1 to 2 meters ahead, or with one or both players starting on their stomachs, for example. The player who does not reach his or her objective is punished by having to do a specified number of push-ups. Keep in mind, the push-ups are not really important to the exercise. They're only used to try to ensure that...
All right, so we kind of already talked about that. So simple example, and I want to maybe just draw your attention to one thing. Perhaps you can see it here with the players on the screen. What do you notice about their faces, Tony?
About what, Richard?
Their faces. What do you see?
I can't see them very well, Richard.
No? Yeah. Well, okay, the camera angle is not the best, but does it look like they're smiling?
No, Richard, I can't see.
No,
so
all right.
I don't think they are smiling.
Oh, they are. They're having a good time.
The player who does not reach his or her objective is...
So this is it. So these types of exercises are fun. And the reason I asked that is, there was a comment I made before about professionals love this. You can tell them that the one who gets their penny pulled the most is the one that has to carry the equipment back or clean up the locker room or whatever. The punishment doesn't matter. It's just more of a game. But the idea is that, young kids love this, teenagers love this, high level, low level, they all get quite a lot of enjoyment out of it. And then, if we watch them run, does it look like they're running as fast
by having to do it?
Right? They are. And the reason they are is because there's a little incentive and competition out of it. So that's the first example. I do see I don't know if it's in the chat here, right? Yeah. So this is from Thomas. Okay, I'll read this one. Is there any ratio between the meters of sprints and the rest time depending on repetition? So for example, if you do 10 sprints of 15 meters each in between, active rest is 15 seconds, 10 sprints, we have 2 minutes. Okay, so that's a good question. So this is the best way, okay, that I can explain this. The work to rest ratio between each run, you can pretty much keep that 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Don't worry so much about, the reality is if the sprint is longer with that ratio, you're going to rest longer anyway, right? So if you sprint for 6 seconds, you're going to rest, for 1 minute. And if you sprint for 2 seconds, you're only going to rest for 10 seconds. So keep the work to rest ratio the same, but you can also do sets, meaning you can do one set of 10 sprints where the work to rest ratio between the repetitions is 1 to 10, and then another set of 10. But in between the two sets, you can rest a bit more. And typically between sets, I might rest anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So there's nothing wrong with that. And the last thing, and again, this I know this is just a little mini course, and maybe we can't go through all the detail, but it's probably a good range to have players not do no less than 10 and no more than 30 of these runs in any workout. And maybe you can even push that down 10 to 20. Why? Because they don't do more than that many sprints in a game. Sometimes they do even less than that. But, for speed training, 10 sprints, 15 sprints, 20, you don't really need many more. If the sprints are shorter, you can probably go closer to 30. Okay, so Thomas, I hope that, that answers your question. And I do see Nicholas here, which I'll get to. Could you mention the importance of linear and not linear speed training? Yeah, so linear and non-linear. Okay, so maybe I'll ask Tony, what type of sprinting is this here? This linear or non-linear?
Linear.
Straight line, right? Simple.
Straight line,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so that's one way. And of course, we know that there's a lot of runs that soccer players do, which are very linear. So there's nothing wrong with training that way. Good thing is that even in this little exercise, we had a little progression to add some agility or non-linear running. Okay, and simply put, agility, all it means is that there's some type of change in direction. It makes the work non-linear. All right, so if we have a look, that's the diagram. The setup is the same, but now we got a little cone 5 meters away where the players on the signal, they have to go first 5 meters forward, then 5 meters back where they came, and then they do the same chase. So let's have a look at this.
We have now seen examples of 3 different types of on-foot, a short 2 by 5 meter important part of the exercise.
Oh,
each player should do an equal number of repetitions with and without the tail, and a good total number of repetitions would be somewhere between 10 to 16 variables, such as the you want to train.
Oh,
sport
no,
of soccer.
okay. So
in our next video,
we have the
second
diagram here, but we don't have the video for this one. But that's okay, because we've got a video for the next one, which will show some more agility here. So, and this is one that was done in another NSCAC clinic. This time it was with Valerio's group, the SE90, out in Caledon. So,
which one means
you
go?
guys can see this.
Not this one,
Again,
right?
I'm showing them a green versus a
who's
red.
got a yellow?
Okay.
Yeah.
These are young. These are under 10,
One
by the
yellow
way.
to
These are
demo
little ones.
in the front.
And again, look
So
at
we
their
have one
faces,
yellow
Tony. Are they
who's gonna
smiling?
compete against one.
They're smiling.
to start with. These 2 are competing. The rest, you will, but not yet. When you see this, I'm just going to take
Maybe
your
I'll go
place
through
to
the
demonstrate.
introduction because I've kind
Listen,
of shown
around
you.
this time, I'm going to pass the ball to the guy who is first. And that guy is going to receive a pass, and we're going to try to score in the goal. Hey, I'm not going to tell you much about what I want you to do. All I'm going to tell you is you have to score. The one who does, let's say I beat him, right? I'm faster than him. And then I get the ball. What do you think he has to do? Yes, he's going to try to stop me, and I'll say if he can stop me, he can score. Does it make sense? Are you sure? Do you guys want to try one? Why don't you go? We'll get these. Okay. Are you ready?
Here's the first
you
repetition
sure?
here. All right. I've got balls at my feet. There they go.
Go, 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 go.
It's actually quite a good move.
Remember,
There.
you can score if you stop him. Oh, very good. Okay, all right. Hey.
Still under
so,
10 seconds,
do we
but right at
understand this game?
the limit. Okay.
Simple, right?
Watch a couple more repetitions here.
See if you can finish. See
This
if you
took a
can
little
finish.
too long here. Right.
Doesn't want to shoot this guy. No. Very good. See if you can finish. Okay, very good.
One more. They got it. Okay. All right. So nonlinear. Why is it nonlinear? Because they're running diagonally, they're changing direction. Okay. And then we added this little component of, finishing and going to goal. So not only is there an incentive to win the race, but there's an added incentive because if you win the race, then I pass it to you. And the other player, again, we gave the other player a clear direction, which is to try to defend and chase. And these are good. I'll just give a few little pointers just about how I like to do these exercises. I didn't put a goalkeeper in goal. Sometimes with these younger players, it's nice to let them score, and so these exercises, if there's, a relatively big goal and no goalkeeper, maybe they're going to get more repetitions of scoring goals. But you could certainly, especially with older players, you can have this, occurring outside the penalty box and, with goalkeepers and all that, no problem. When you do the pass, like you always want to make sure you favor one player, right? Even if they got through at the same time, because you don't want to send them into a 50-50 ball. So pass, towards one player, and here and there, again, some of them maybe they slowed it down a bit. You saw that kind of example in the middle. Ideally, we don't want it to become a slow 1 versus 1. We want it to become a sort of a quick try to finish, And if they can't finish right away, then it becomes a 1v1. But keeping it within that 1 to 10 second work period. Again, Tony, I mentioned, if you look at their faces, were they having fun?
Oh no, they were. Richard, I wanted to mention something.
Mm-hmm.
Once they win the ball, the player wins the ball. To make sure that they don't take too long before they take the shot, put a time limit on it. Say
Right.
After you win the ball, you got 4 seconds to take a shot. If you don't take the shot, you lose it.
Right. Yeah. You can
So
do
now,
that.
now they may be trying a little bit harder, quicker
Mm-hmm.
to put that, put the ball in the net.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that that's a great example, and maybe coaches that are watching and listening to this later, like this is a soccer exercise. This is a finishing exercise, basically, right? That's what it is. So, I'm sure lots of you as coaches, you probably use hundreds of different exercises, something like this. All I'm saying is, okay, let's pay attention to the sprinting now, right? We had players in 4 that were resting, and 1 that's working. So we can call that 1 to 4, but really I added some time in between. So the work to rest ratio might even have been a little closer to 1 to 5, or maybe even 1 to 6. So that's enough recovery that they're not getting fatigued. I made the distances relevant to what I think is useful for soccer. And then of course we add more specificity. This is non-linear, and it's also, we've got a ball. So not only are they sprinting, they have to, of course, decelerate when the ball comes. They have to make the shot. There's all these physical things happening. But it looks more like soccer. It's more along the lines of the specificity. But, of course, then it's harder to predict. So then you're right, Tony. Maybe you want to put a time limit before they shoot. And you want to maybe do some other things. Maybe you can, have a shooting line that once they cross that line, they have to shoot, something like that. So they're not, holding the ball too long or whatever it is, right? So that's just another example, and maybe the last thing I'll ask before I move on to the final example is maybe Tony can answer this, or anyone else is welcome to. Why do you think I'm asking them to go with a certain color? Like, what's the purpose of that, rather than, I don't know, blowing a whistle or something like that? Why? Why do you think?
Richard, I'm going to let somebody else answer this one.
Anyone have an idea? Liz says increase awareness. Okay, you're on the right track, but specifically, awareness of what? Let's see. Oh, here comes the answers. Okay, all right. Taking information, making decision, perception. Okay, so we're getting there. Yeah. So in the game, right, if we're going to talk about reacting, like what is a trigger? What is something that tells us sprint? Is it what we hear, or is it what we see usually? Right? It's usually what we see. Now, it's not like we're looking for colors of cones or whatever, but we're looking for a player that makes a run. And then we have to go and track that player down. Or we're looking for the ball, the ball that's won in a certain area, or my teammate puts his head up and that tells me he's about to make a pass and I'm going to run. So this is getting players to react to what they see. This is really simple because these are young players. Again, older players, sometimes I don't stand there. Sometimes I stand behind them and I tell them to make a run and check their shoulder to see where the cone is, right? Sometimes I put numbers up and I tell them to read the number out to me. There's lots of, and even some of our colleagues, Kevin McGreskin, Tony, I did an interview with him in the winter. He's out in Mexico now. He's written a book on scanning and, all these abilities. And so there is this reaction time and this, visual motor, let's say, right? The connection between the eyes, the brain, and the feet. There is this component to it. So we're training that, okay, Liz? Like, we're training players not to respond to me saying go or me blowing a whistle. That's not really as relevant to soccer. And here in the chat, right? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, good. All right. So again, simple exercise, right? All I'm trying to tell you is when you're planning these things, pay attention to the physical details. Don't let them rest too much, and don't force them to run without resting enough.
Richard, I just want to make a comment. I know you want to rush through this, but I just wanted to make this comment that,
of course, yeah.
Sometimes when you look at these exercises, a lot of coaches will probably think, like, they're not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? So it's not, that they have to sweat. Or at the end of the session, they have to be so tired that they can even walk, that, oh man, we had a great session. No, like we said before, less is more. And if you do it right, these are great activities that, you know, the word I'm looking for is that develop, right? All of this anaerobic, aerobic, and all of this stuff, if you do it right. But you don't need to overdo it. It doesn't have to be crazy. Simple, very, very simple. More
100%. And keep in mind, you know, fatigue in a speed session is the opposite of what you want. So, you know, yeah, it might look like they're maybe standing around or not too long, you know, but within reason. You know, we want to avoid fatigue, because if we have fatigue, we interrupt the neuromuscular coordination goes down. All of a sudden, the muscles get a little weaker. We can't run as fast, and then the players will not actually get faster. So I want to show one more example here, which is again from another NSCAC clinic. We did so many of these before COVID. Okay, let me make sure that everyone can see, and I think obviously the share sound is also working fine now. So here we are.
You are like my shadow if I'm a leader. So I move and you are like my shadow.
This is me,
but keep a little bit of distance, so
okay.
there's no contact, no touching here. I'm trying to lose my shadow. If I cross this line, I must go that way. If I cross this line, I must go that way. And we give you 3 seconds to lose your shadow. Are you ready? Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Okay, all right, here we go. Okay.
All right, so
good.
That's me. You know, I'm getting slower, I guess, as I get older, but we get the idea. So you have a leader and a follower. We call this shadow play. And this particular exercise in this clinic, we progressed it from, again, no ball, so maybe not as specific, but what do you have there? You've got agility, you've got change of direction. Okay, we've made it into a little competition because the leader is trying to get to one side or the other before the follower gets there, but the follower is following. So you've got the agility, you've got the competition, and you've got a straight sprint. So I want you to watch a few of these repetitions of the players, and you know, are they having fun? You can watch their faces, watch how fast they move, right? Watch the competitiveness, and then, you know, I'll show you a few of the progressions. So here we are.
Hey, and the followers, do what she did, follow, and then when you finish, switch. Switch when you finish. Got it? Play. Let's go.
So there they are.
Good. Come on. Yeah, we need creativity and speed. Good. Leaders are on this side. Yes, remember I said switch, remember? Yeah, come on. All right, you sure?
All right. So there's the first progression. Okay.
Exercise only works.
As we move on,
Followers do
I
not.
just want to
So
show,
walk.
okay, so this is the second little progression that I did, which is now, what we've got is we've got the followers have a ball in their hands. Oh, sorry, not the leaders rather have a ball in their hands, and the followers don't. So now the leaders can make their little moves with the ball. Whichever way they throw the ball, they're going to run to the opposite direction. So again, simple little exercise.
Throw the ball.
Okay.
Me, not the ball. You understand? Okay, back up. It's an important demonstration, eh? Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, on we go.
All right. So that's just me showing them, and then let's watch them, right? Okay. So whichever way they throw the ball,
to the back of this line.
they run to the opposite direction.
You're sure?
The players, the followers, have to follow the player,
Creativity and speed.
not the ball.
Play.
Remember, I'm asking them for creativity and then speed. So both. Okay?
Play.
Here you go.
Good.
There you go. All right, so we get the idea there. Now, what's happening? Again, there's agility. Now we've got a ball. Of course, the ball is in the hands, but there's a little bit more specificity. Maybe the work time still within that range, right? It's pretty short. I actually told them that I want them to make their move within 3 seconds. So I actually did, Tony, in that one, I put a time limit in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the work to rest ratio. Now you've got 4 on each side. You know, 1 are working, 3 are resting. You can call it 1 to 3. But because they're, you know, they have to jog back and all that, there's if you time it, it's a little bit closer to 1 to 5. So it's right on the edge of that kind of, you know, speed threshold. We could always add a bit more rest if we really wanted to give them more rest. But, you know, keep in mind, this particular clinic, this was a big clinic with like the whole club. So here we had to keep everyone moving. So I want to just show you then the next progression. Okay. So this one now involves the ball.
So here,
okay,
it's the same game. You are not trying to tackle. You are just a shadow. We give you 3 to 5 seconds.
3 to 5 seconds. There you go. Right.
Okay,
all right.
good.
So,
all right.
Same exact rules, except now the ball is on the ground. Whichever way the player kicks the ball, she's going to run to the opposite direction. Okay, and watch again. Let's watch the players.
Good follow. So, we fit. Okay, play.
Here we go.
All right. Good. You're following the player, right? Okay, you got it next time. Don't worry, you got it.
Some more. Okay, all right. So again, as we progress, as we make things more specific, right, on the specificity side of that continuum, we do lose a bit of predictability. Sometimes the players lose control of the ball. Sometimes maybe, they don't always finish the run and all that. But, it's important to know that's soccer, right? Soccer is variable. Okay, so what are they getting though? They're getting lots of repetitions of agility. They're getting lots of short sprints, which are well within the range of what we talked about. It is a competition. So for the most part, if you watch the way they're running, they are running as fast as they can. And, it's enjoyable. It's fun. Another comment in the chat, the distance from the box to the outside, Liz, I made that as exactly 5 meters from the outside line of the box out. Why? Because 5 meters is sort of the optimal range for those short sprints in soccer. You could go 10 meters. One thing I'll tell you though, Liz, or anybody else, if you're going to start making the distances longer, then you're definitely going to need more rest, because then they're going to start to get tired. And I'll show again, maybe just one more progression here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a race to get there or there. Got it? Demo here, yeah.
Oh, this is more of the same, I think. No? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good.
So now what did we change? Now the follower has to stay with me. I'm not kicking the ball. So now I'm dribbling out. Okay. So now, that's me and the players as well. So now, we're maybe making it a bit more intense, perhaps, for the players on the ball, because they can't just kick it and run. Now they have to dribble. Still no contact, though, right? We sort of progressed to making it more specific.
I'm losing speed in my old
Let's
age.
watch these. Let's watch these players do this.
But stay with creativity and speed. Are you ready?
Okay.
Let's go. Play.
Right, and look at their faces, Tony. It's hard to see, but they're not bored. They're not bored, right?
I don't think they're smiling now, Richard.
Some skillful players here.
Yeah.
This is good. So,
Richard, I have a question for you, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, on a professional team, they train every day.
Yeah.
So the fitness coach can schedule an aerobic day, can schedule a speed day, right? Strength and so on.
Yeah.
So for the regular coach, they train 3 times a week,
right,
and so on. When is the best time to do your speed training? Is it before, the day before the game, or 2 days before the game, or in the middle, or at the beginning of the week? When would be the best time to do it?
Another good question, and I'll say I'll answer it quickly, but keeping in mind that in our course, in my course, we talk about this in a lot of detail about periodization. Yep. As a general rule, these types of exercises, because they don't cause a lot of fatigue, they're probably better to do closer to before the game. Maybe not even the day before, but 2 days before or 3 days before, as opposed to right in the middle. Usually in the middle of the week is a better time to do the higher load, the sessions that are more aerobic. And as you get closer to the game, you can start to do the sprint exercises. Another thing to think about with periodization is that you can have a phase of the year. Maybe you want to go through a 3-week block, a 3-week phase where 2 of the 3 sessions are like this and 1 is aerobic. And then maybe you want to go through another block where only 1 of the sessions is like this and 2 are aerobic. So you can do that, but as a general rule, these don't cause fatigue as much, and because of that, they're better, before the game. And I just want to, quickly, because unfortunately today, we got to be done right around 3 o'clock, and so we'll be a little quicker. I just want to show the final progression here, which I hope I have. Do we have it? What we progressed to is we made it simply into a 1 versus 1 exercise with a little goal. So let's just watch the same setup. Now we have one player with the ball is going to pass to the other and come and close down as a defender. And we've got an actual 1v1 live with 2 goals. So this is 1v1 training. I'm sure coaches, you've seen, hundreds of exercises like this, but this is speed. It is speed and agility because they are changing direction, moving very fast, running fast. They're doing all of it, right? And they're doing it with a ball. So let's just watch a few repetitions of that.
You're trying to win it, right? So go forward and win it, right? Go forward and win it.
Here and there, you don't always have the
How's it
intensity
going?
you
It's
want.
okay.
But there you go.
Ooh, in the thing. Ooh. Ooh. All right. You'll be okay, though. You'll survive. Yeah.
Okay.
Some creativity here. Let's go. Some creativity here. There it is.
Okay, so again, that just progressed into a 1v1. And this is just an example. Again, we did this as a clinic, and it's up on our site, members, you can see it. And with the same shape, with that same little box, we actually, I didn't even show it here, but we did a warm-up with that shape. Then we did the follow the leader without the ball. Then we did the follow the leader with the ball in the hands. Then the follow the leader with the ball on the feet, where you pass it and you run. Then we did the follow the leader dribbling. And then we did 1v1. So 5 progressions, the same shape, lots of repetitions of speed and agility. And in this particular case, again, this was a clinic. I think the players might have done more than 30 sprints in total, maybe. But in your own session, you can try to limit it a bit more if you want. Clifton, 20 to 45 minutes overall speed and agility during a practice. That's a good question. And Clifton, I would say, yeah. Okay, if you do them, if you kind of sort of work out the math and you say, okay, we've got a work to rest ratio of 1 to 5, and the sprints are maybe 5 seconds or so. So you sprint, you rest a minute, you sprint again, and you want to do 10 of those. Well, okay, it's about 10 minutes. You want to do 20 of those. Well, it's about 20 minutes. You want to rest in between a little bit. Now you're at 25 or 30 minutes. So that's it. More than that, really, the time isn't as much of an issue as the total number of sprints. You want to keep that 10 to 30 in total. So those are the exercises. And now, what I'll do is I'll go back, just to kind of finish up the presentation. And please, anyone else, if you've got some questions, don't be shy. I do need to go probably around 5 after 3 is the absolute latest, but here we go. So we saw some of these exercises. I'll give you my kind of wrap up and conclusions now to this. So first of all, these are the questions, right? As a coach, ask yourself when you're planning these exercises, does the activity or game or 1v1 or whatever, does it look like soccer? What do you think, Tony? Did some of those look like soccer?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You had 1v1, you had finishing, you had some agility, changes of direction, dribbling, right? Do you have an appropriate intensity for the work period? I'm saying 9 or 10 out of 10. It's got to be, the work period has to be fast. And how do you do that? You do that with competitions. Make players compete against each other. Put incentives. Okay? Do you have an appropriate intensity for the overall session? And that has to be lower, 4 to 5 or 4 to 6 out of 10, not higher. They need rest. Do you have the appropriate volume for the work period? 1 to 10 seconds, not more, because then you're not working with the anaerobic alactic system anymore. And the rest period, right, that gives you your work to rest ratio of 1 to 5 to 1 to 10. Okay, thank you very much, right? As I said in the beginning, don't forget to follow up. All of you that registered, everyone that registered for part 1, part 2, part 3, or all of them, you get a 1/3, 33% off discount on the full soccer fitness trainers course if you'd like to set it up with your club and academy. Thomas, I think hand is up. Is there a question, Thomas? Or Did you type it? Let's see, Q&A. Oh, no. All right. No question from Thomas. My mistake. Yeah, got it. Pat, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I don't know, Tony, maybe a couple of questions just before we wrap things up? Or
Yeah, no, Richard. I have 100 questions.
let's leave it to one good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll save them for next time.
Yeah, for sure.
For next time.
Yeah.
But the thing is, maybe just a little comment. Two. One comment is that, when it's not difficult to design the sessions once you know the work to rest ratio. Like you said, the intensity, the duration, the work to rest. So, if you do it a few times, you can figure it out. It's not difficult.
Right.
And the other thing to remember is that, don't forget that within your training session, your last 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're going to have a game, right? So in the game that you have with your players, depending whether it's a small-sided game or another type of game or a full field game, you can change the intensity by making the field smaller, right? So they're always working. Or you can make it bigger if you want to work on the aerobic, where they have to run, so on. So these things are not difficult. Once you take the course, then you'll be able to paste it and put it all together. And you got to try it, you got to work at it. And after 2 or 3 tries or one season, you got it, and you will do a better job with your players. A lot of this stuff that you're showing, Richard, I've done it,
of course,
because you told me.
Yeah.
And when you ask me the questions and you say, Tony, well, because I was lucky enough to work with you, most of the time I know the answer. Maybe maybe not. But I've done a lot of this stuff. And the one thing to don't worry about whether or not it looks like I have to kill them. If I don't kill them, if they're not sweating or crawling home, then they didn't work hard. Not true. Just keep it simple and keep it specific.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. And yeah, it's great feedback. And you're absolutely right. These exercises are, again, the topic, right? The title of this little mini course is integrating soccer fitness into your training. So you're planning training. You're probably already planning exercises like this. We just have to now, as coaches, right? We just have to start paying attention to the physical part. How long are they working for? How intense are they working for? How much rest? What's the target? Is it speed? Is it endurance? Is it right? And as you said, no, if we kill them every day, then they're dead, right? And if they're dead, then they can't play at the end of the week. So thank you. As I said, unfortunately today I'm just in a bit of a hurry, more than I would normally be. So we'll wrap it up. That's Dave there. I hope you got the the notes here from the slide. Please, again, feel free, anyone, to get in touch. And I, myself and Tony, right, we will look forward to see you again next Wednesday, and we'll have more time next Wednesday. All right.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yep. Take care.